Greetings, my beautiful lovelies. It's Emmy. How are you? It's great to see you and welcome back. Today's video is sponsored by HoneyBook. HoneyBook is the leading client-centered CRM platform for independent businesses. A CRM platform is a customer relationship management platform that allows a business to manage and analyze customer information with the goal to improve customer service, improve retention, and to increase sales. And HoneyBook is a great one. I love that you can find everything you need in one place, from sending proposals and contracts, from handling invoices and scheduling. Everything you need is in one place. I love that HoneyBook offers beautiful templates for invoicing, contracts, and proposals. It's a great way to save time, but more importantly, it's a great way to bring a polished and purposeful contract to your client, elevating your brand and improving your client's experience. I think what I love most about HoneyBook is that it is a tool to manage your business time more efficiently so that you can have more time in your life to do the things that you love. So if you'd like to try HoneyBook for yourself, click the link down below to get a free 7-day trial of HoneyBook and discover how it can save you time and money in your business. Big thanks to HoneyBook for sponsoring this video and for allowing me to make better videos for all of you. Alrighty, my lovelies. Today we're going to be comparing two focaccia bread recipes. The biggest difference between these two recipes is the length of time it's required to make them. 1 hour versus 48 hours. A vast difference in time, and I'm wondering how that management of time affects the flavor and texture of the bread. Right? 48 hours to make bread. Granted, most of that time, almost all of that time, is passive time. The dough is just sitting in my refrigerator. But that's still quite a long time to wait for bread. 2 whole days? I mean, but if it makes the bread taste better, then it's worth it, right? I'm not doing anything. It's just doing its thing, right? But 1 hour to have bread, if I want freshly made bread, I just made a pot of soup, that sounds fantastic too. But do I give up anything? And if so, what do I give up? Won't know till we try. So today we are going to be making focaccia. It's an Italian bread that's kind of flat. Its signature look has these big blustery bubbles on it and has lots of olive oil. Sometimes it's seasoned with rosemary and salt. Today I'm just going to be using salt because I really want to taste the flavors of the bread. And it makes a delicious sandwich, and fresh bread is always delicious, freshly baked homemade bread. So let's go ahead and get started. Now, the quick recipe I'm going to be making comes out of this box. I found this at my supermarket, and what got me is that it's ready in 1 hour. Everything, it says everything, including the mixture and everything, should take about an hour, which I find very surprising. For a yeasted bread, this is going to use yeast. That's the first thing I looked at. I said, is this going to be yeast or is this going to be a quick bread? So a quick bread, like a soda bread or a banana bread, uses baking powder or baking soda for leavening to create the bubbles in the bread to make it rise very quickly. Yeasted bread, on the other hand, usually takes some time for the yeast to munch on the sugars in the recipe to create carbon dioxide gas, to create those bubbles that make your bread. So I'm very curious to see how this is going to work because this is a yeasted bread. But this is made by King Arthur flour, which is a very trusted brand. I made so many of their recipes and they've never let me down. So I'm very curious about it. This was not inexpensive. This was $8.99 at my supermarket for a 9 by 13 pans loaf of bread, which seems like a good amount of bread. At any rate, let's see what this is all about. So here it is, King Arthur Flour's crisp and airy focaccia bread mix kit. So here we have the bread mix. Oh, we have a rosemary spice mixture and perfect rise yeast. Looks like it's Saf brand. Great. So it says to spray the pan with non-stick spray. All right, now we're going to add 2 tablespoons of olive oil and spread it all over the pan. Now, focaccia is a wonderful way to highlight olive oil. Olive oil is so key to this bread, in my opinion. All right, so beautifully slicked with olive oil. So I'm going to add our flour to our bowl. I imagine there's some salt in there. And we're going to add our yeast. I imagine this is going to be instant yeast since it's not requiring us to bloom the yeast in advance. So instant yeast, you don't have to add any water to it to make it hydrate. So whisk that together. Active dry yeast, you do have to hydrate for about 5 minutes in some water. So now we're going to add some hot water, but it's not too hot, 115 to 120 degrees. We don't want to kill the yeast. So I've got my scale here, and here we go, 340 grams. So I think we're doing warm water here because we want to get the yeast cracking, and yeast likes it warm, but not hot. Stir this together with my bread whisk and hot water and 2 tablespoons of oil. Just eyeballing that to form a sticky dough. Oh, it smells so good. That seasoning mix smells like pizza seasoning. It smells fantastic, like oregano. All right, there it is, and it is quite sticky. Now we let this sit for 10 minutes, uncovered. So it has been 10 minutes and our dough has had some time to kind of relax, and it should be easier to manipulate because the gluten has time to kind of chill out a little bit. Otherwise, if we tried to spread this out into our pan, it would want to stretch back out. So that's why that resting time is important. Now we're going to gently place the dough into our oiled pan. I'm going to give it a little bit more oil because, yeah, okay. So now we're going to gently flip the dough to coat it. Oh yeah, look how stretchy it is. And then press the dough gently to the edges of the pan. And it's still quite warm. All right, and it's cooperating pretty nicely. Nice, King Arthur, nice. So this is well slicked and greased, so it's not going to dry out. We're going to let this rise for 30 minutes. Then we're going to come back and drizzle some more oil on top, and then we'll dimple it with our fingertips. And then we're going to pop it into our preheated 425-degree oven and bake for 20 to 30 minutes. So that's pretty much it, a rise time of just 30 minutes. And then let it cool for 5 minutes, and then we should be able to eat it. So really, it just takes an hour to make this. Pretty incredible. I can't wait to taste this. Since it's pretty cold in here, I'm going to place this dough into my microwave. Not going to turn it on, but I'm going to put a glass of hot steamy water in there and let that kind of sit in there so it's nice and warm and toasty, so this can rise to its best in half an hour. Okay. Don't turn the microwave on. We're just using the microwave as a vessel. So now that recipe 1 is in the process of rising, let's go ahead and get started on our second focaccia recipe. And this comes from Alexandra Bakes, and I'll put a link to the original link down below. This recipe requires a 48-hour rest time. Actually, technically, you can make it right away. It's best to have the dough rest at least overnight, if not to 18, 48, even 72 hours. Lots of resting time allows the gluten to develop and give you those nice big airy bubbles that you want in your bread. So I've already prepared the focaccia dough. It's been resting in my refrigerator for 48 hours, but let me walk you through the steps of what I did to make the dough. So Alexandra's recipe offers both weight and volume measure, and I chose to use my scale. I find it's the most accurate. So in a bowl, I weighed out 512 grams of flour, and then I added 10 grams of salt, and then 2 teaspoons of instant yeast, and then you mix that together. Then I added 2 cups or 455 grams of water, and just mix that really, really well. That's it. Mixed it all well. So the mixture is going to be very wet. It's almost like a batter. So next we're going to take some olive oil and generously slick the top of the dough. This is important. We don't want to form a skin while it's resting in the fridge. So now we cover it, place it in the refrigerator. Overnight is good, 18 hours is better, and I put mine in for a full 48 hours. And this is what it looks like. You see those bubbles? I love using these to cover my bowls. Whenever I'm making bread, I make sourdough bread at least once a week, but these shower caps, I use them over and over and over again. I like the clear ones so I can see what the dough is doing. Love them. Rinse them off, use them over and over again. Love. Okay, look at this. Go, 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 go. Ding, ding, ding. Love that. See the dough? See those bubbles? Great. So I've looked at lots of other focaccia bread recipes, and they too don't require much work, but many of them ask that you fold the dough. at least in the beginning, every 20 minutes, every half an hour, and that develops the gluten. But gluten can also form with lots of time too. So if you just let the dough rest, those gluten chains will form on their own without any kneading or folding whatsoever. So that's why a long time is good. So here's our dough, and I've got my pan here, and we're gonna slick this with a ton of oil. Again, olive oil, so we have it beautifully coated. Now we're gonna invert this into our, oh, it's just gonna pour right out. Look at that. You see how it's just oozing out? We're gonna flip it. Look at that. Oh, that's beautiful. Look at that. And we're gonna just flip it a couple of times on itself. Flip the whole buddy over. Tuck in the edges a bit. Now we're gonna not touch this, leave this alone for 2 to 4 hours for its second rise. So this one's quite cold. I'm gonna put this in my dough proofer, which keeps the dough about 80, 85 degrees so that this can have a nice warm temperature environment to rise. Okay, wash off my hands. Alrighty, my lovelies, recipe number 1 has been resting for 30 minutes and it doesn't look all that different. Don't see any noticeable difference in rise, but 30 minutes is all it requested. So now we're gonna drizzle it with a little bit more oil and we're gonna dimple, because I think you want to see the dimpling process, because I do. So we're gonna do this up close because this is the fun part. And now, usually you would do 2 hands, but since I'm holding the camera, I'm just gonna do 1 hand. Just stick our fingers into the focaccia, into the dough. Now this makes little dimples for the oil to go into, but also for the toppings to kind of sink into later. Twist it around. Look at that, it looks great. Feels great too, it's so squishy. I'm also using this as an opportunity to press the dough into the corners to make sure that the dough is evenly distributed. Are we evenly dimpled in all directions? I think so. Beautiful. We're gonna bake this for 20 to 30 minutes, about 25 minutes I'm imagining. Then we're going to take it out, sprinkle it with our topping, let it cool in the pan for 5 minutes before we transfer it to a rack to cool completely. And then we will taste it. Okay. All right, my lovelies, I am back with recipe number 1, completely out of the oven, and indeed it came together in about an hour, and it smells fantastic and it looks fantastic. Look at that, bread start to finish in an hour, yeasted bread. I'm gonna cut it right in the middle, my cutting board that's too small, just so we can get a look at this crumb. There we go. Yeah, as expected, the bubbles are not that big. When I say bubbles, these holes right here, there was not a lot of rise time for this. Here's the bottom, beautiful and golden. Nice and toasty. I'm gonna give you a stacked look. There we go. Looks great to me for having just sat an hour. All right, let's give it a slice. Ooh. Look at that. Alrighty. I have to say, when I first opened this box, I was immediately struck with the smell of pizza. And I thought, oregano, that's so interesting, because the topping very specifically says rosemary, and it did not smell like rosemary to me. But then when I sprinkled rosemary on top of this, I smelled rosemary. I'm like, yes, that's definitely rosemary. Rosemary to me has more of a kind of resinous, piney smell, and oregano has the smell that I associate with pizza. Then I read the ingredients on the box, and it says it contains pizza flavoring. That's what I think I associate with the pizza smell. It wasn't oregano. It's this pizza flavoring. At any rate, let's go ahead and give this a taste. Here we go. 1 hour of focaccia bread. Itadakimasu. It's pretty tasty bread for bread that was made start to finish in an hour. It's fluffy and squishy. It's not very chewy though. And it reminds me a bit of biscuits, the kind of enriched flavor of this bread. I think it's the amount of olive oil in the bread that makes it taste rich and biscuity, but they're not flaky like biscuits, but pleasantly fluffy and not very chewy, but that's not surprising because we didn't spend a lot of time developing any gluten. It didn't sit by itself to form any gluten, but the bottom has a bit of a crunch, not too much, as does the top of the bread. The top crust is a little bit like pizza crust, but I think it also just tastes like pizza dough a bit too. It's great. The rosemary is nice. It has a very kind of piney flavor to it, but the bread itself has a lot of flavor. Nicely seasoned, balanced with salt. Now we just got a pocket of rosemary. Very resinous, very piney. It's a strong herb. If you don't like rosemary, then you can just top this with a bit of salt if you like. Sun-dried tomatoes, olives are very popular on focaccia, or you could just have plain. But a very satisfactory loaf of bread in a very short amount of time. 1 hour start to finish. This would make a perfect accompaniment to a bowl of soup or some kind of quick kind of brunchy meal. And nothing kind of rounds things out better than freshly baked bread, no? I also like that there's plenty of support here. There's a QR code that you can scan to get some more tips and tricks on how to make sure that your bread turns out perfectly. So, yeah. Alrighty, so now we have to wait a few hours before we can taste our long version of focaccia bread. Very curious to compare the two. Alrighty, I've got some chores to do while we wait for the dough to rise. See you in a little bit. Alrighty, lovelies. It has been 2.5, 3 hours since I placed my refrigerated dough into this pan, pressed it out, and let it rise. Now look at that. Look at all the bubblage, and we haven't even dimpled it yet. Look at that action. You need to see this up close. Oh, the bubbles are growing before our eyes. Oh, I love it. Yes. Yes, this is what time does. Okay. I mean, it's beautiful. Okay, so now we are going to dimple this. More olive oil drizzled over top. Now we're going to take our impeccably clean hands and press. Oh my goodness. That feels so good. Press, press. It feels so soft. Okay, I think we're properly dimpled. Now I'm going to take some sea salt. This is Malden sea salt. Now, I've heard of Malden sea salt, but I've never tried it until recently. Malden sea salt flakes. And I just learned that it's composed of these beautiful pyramids of salt. Isn't that cool? Look at that. It's even part of their logo. Isn't that brilliant? Now we're going to take the salt, crush it a little bit, sprinkle it on top. We don't want the flakes to be so big. Okay, now into our preheated 425 degree oven. Same baking time, 25 minutes. Goodbye, my little friend. Alrighty, my lovelies, I will see you in 25 minutes. Alrighty, my lovelies, finally, the last batch of focaccia fresh out of the oven, and it looks beautiful. Look at that. This one definitely is bubblier. You can see the bubbles in profile, and equally golden in color. Here's the first one. Very even coloring, and this one is golden as well. A little bit darker in the middle. Smells fantastic, still warm, and we're gonna cut this one warm as well because I can't wait. Ooh, this one sounds more crackly. And let's take a look at the crumb. Ooh, yes. So this one has bigger bubbles, as we can see. And if you compare it side by side to the 1 hour, you can see that the long rise is definitely taller than the shorter rise. Ooh, look at that. Now this one has a little bit more structure to it. The other one wanted to fall apart more, And this one's got a little bit more stretch. You see how it's bouncing? Oh, I wish you could see the steam coming off of this. Alrighty, let's give this a taste. Now this one, I did not put any rosemary on. In fact, I don't find that I'm a huge fan of rosemary, so I just kept it simple with the salt for this one. So let's give it a go. Itadakimasu. Pretty big bread is so good. So this too has a nice crunch on the bottom from all the oil. It's kind of fried up in the oil, like the first one. Hear that? But what's different, and as I suspected, this loaf has a chewier crumb. There's more stretch and more resistance and pull to it, more texture, more bounce than the first loaf, which makes absolute sense because this loaf had more time to develop gluten. You can also develop gluten by kneading the bread and forcing those protein strands to form. We didn't do any kneading. We just let time do what it does when it comes to forming gluten strands. This first loaf didn't have any time to do that, and we didn't knead the bread at all, but it still made a beautiful loaf of bread. I served it to my family for dinner. My youngest, in fact, said it was better than the regular loaf I make every week. Really, really enjoyed it, and really love the fact that you can make a loaf of bread in 1 hour. Yeasted bread, 1 hour, start to finish, fantastic. Now, if you've got the time, I definitely would go this route. There's just so little effort involved, literally 5 minutes of effort to stir the ingredients together and then to put it in your refrigerator to let it sit overnight at least, if not longer. And then you've got yourself a gorgeous loaf of bread. You do have to let it rise again, and that's pretty important. But again, it's passive. You just let it do its thing on the counter, and then when you're ready, you throw it into the oven. So yeah, some of the easiest, best tasting bread I've ever made. So very easy. So in conclusion, what did I learn? Well, I learned that both of these recipes make excellent bread. This one comes together in an hour, start to finish. Fan-stinkin-tastic. I would definitely buy this product again. I think it would be great to have in your pantry for those days that you just need to whip up something fast and easy and quick. This recipe I too would make again, simply because it makes a super beautiful loaf of bread with very little effort. You do have to plan a bit ahead, but there's a lot of flexibility in this recipe. You can whip up this dough, let it sit in the fridge up to 72 hours before you bake it, and it only gets better the longer it sits, the more gluten forms. So a no-brainer, really. I think the biggest amount of planning is for the second rise. So make sure you take it out of the refrigerator with enough time so that it has a decent enough time to get a beautiful rise, so you get nice big dimples and bubbles. But there you have it, 2 beautiful focaccia recipes. The extra time is definitely worth it, but the short one is worth it as well. Thanks so much for watching, and big thanks to HoneyBook for sponsoring this video. If you'd like to try a 7-day free trial of HoneyBook, please click the link down below and discover how HoneyBook can save you time and money managing your business. Thanks again for watching. I hope you enjoyed that one. I hope you learned something. Please share this video with your friends, follow me on social media, like this video, subscribe, and I shall see you in the next one. Toodaloo, take care, bye! I don't know why I shook my hand twice. I don't know, sometimes your hands do things that are beyond you. All right, I've got a lot of focaccia bread and a beautifully oiled cutting board. I don't know why I don't know.